The sky above Kepler 442c burned red with the fire of dying ships. Elder HFY stood at the observation deck of the colony's central tower, his crystalline body reflecting the harsh light of explosions in space. Each flash meant another defender had fallen. Each silence that followed meant the enemy was one step closer to breaking through their final defenses. 3 months. 3 months since the Ravak horde had arrived in their black ships, demanding surrender and slaves. 3 months since the peaceful mining colony had transformed into a war zone. The Zephyrians were not warriors by nature. Their tall, translucent bodies were made for thinking and creating, not fighting and killing. They had built their entire civilization around harmony and growth, never imagining they would face such brutal enemies. "Elder," came a soft voice behind him. HFY turned to see Kiraneth, his chief communications officer. Her usual blue glow had dimmed to a pale flicker, showing her exhaustion. The beacon. Still no response from the major powers. HFY closed his eyes. The distress signal had been broadcasting for weeks now, reaching across 17 sectors of known space. Every day, Kiraneth checked for replies. Every day, the answer was the same. The galaxy's great civilizations had heard their cries for help and chosen to ignore them. "What about the Altarian Federation?" HFY asked, though he already knew the answer. "They sent a formal reply yesterday." Kiraneth's voice was barely above a whisper. "They said, Kepler 442c falls outside their territory of responsibility. They cannot risk their ships in neutral space." The Elder nodded slowly. The Altarians were known across the galaxy for their advanced technology and vast fleets. If anyone could drive away the Ravak, it would be them. But apparently, political boundaries mattered more than lives. The Centauri Collective? Similar response. They said their trade routes do not extend to this sector. Military intervention would be too expensive for the potential return. Of course. The collective measured everything in profit and loss. A small mining colony had nothing to offer their vast commercial empire. And the vegan Commonwealth? Kiraneth hesitated. They said we should have invested in better defenses if we wanted to survive in this region of space. They called our situation an example of poor planning. HFY felt something crack inside his crystal chest. The Commonwealth had the strongest military in this part of the galaxy. Their war fleets could crush the Ravak horde without breaking a sweat. Instead, they chose to lecture the dying about their failures. A deep rumble shook the tower. Through the observation windows, they could see another section of the protective dome starting to fail. The energy barrier that surrounded their city flickered like a dying candle. When it fell, nothing would stand between 50,000 innocent souls and the Ravak's hunger for slaves. "How long do we have?" HFY asked. "Engineering says maybe 2 days, 3 if we're lucky." 2 days. In 2 days, everything they had built would be gone. Their children would be dragged away to serve brutal masters in the dark ships. Their elders would be killed for sport. Their beautiful city, carved from living crystal and shaped by generations of careful growth, would be stripped bare for anything valuable. The Elder walked to his communication console and opened a channel to the entire colony. His image appeared on screens throughout the city, in homes and shelters, and the deep mining tunnels where families huddled in fear. "My people," he began, his voice steady despite the pain in his heart. "I will not lie to you about our situation. The galaxy has chosen to abandon us. No help is coming from the great powers. We stand alone against the darkness." Murmurs of despair rippled through the colony. Some voices called out in anguish. Others whispered prayers to the ancient spirits of their homeworld, now impossibly far away. "But," HFY continued, raising his voice, "we are not defeated while we still breathe. We are the children of Zephyr Prime. Shaped by crystal and star wind, our ancestors survived the great storm that lasted 100 years. They built cities from nothing but hope and determination. That same strength flows in our bodies now. In the streets below, he could see people gathering around the public screens. Families held each other close. Workers emerged from the mines, still carrying their tools. Even the youngest children stopped their games to listen. Tomorrow, when the Ravak come, they expect to find a broken people begging for mercy. Instead, they will find Zephyrians standing proud. We may not be warriors, but we are not helpless. Every tunnel in this city has been prepared. Every building has been reinforced. We will make them pay for every step they take on our sacred ground. The crowd began to glow brighter. It was an old Zephyrian response to strong emotion, when their crystalline bodies resonated with shared feeling. The light spread from person to person until the entire city blazed with defiant determination. If this is to be our final stand, Thexvara said, then let it be remembered that we faced the end with courage. Let the galaxy know that when evil came to our door, the Zephyrians of Kepler, 442c, did not go quietly into the void. As he closed the channel, another explosion lit up the sky. This one was closer. Much closer. The enemy was testing their defenses, looking for weak points. Soon, very soon, the real attack would begin. Kiraneth moved to stand beside him at the window. Elder, do you really believe we can hold them off? Thexvara watched his people moving through the streets below, no longer running in panic but walking with purpose. Groups formed to check barriers and distribute supplies. The miners had brought up their heavy equipment to help with the fortifications. Even the children were helping, carrying messages and small tools wherever they were needed. No, he said quietly. We cannot defeat them, but we can show them what it means to face a people who refuse to surrender their souls. The red sky pulsed with another distant explosion. In the silence that followed, 50,000 Zephyrians prepared for their final battle, abandoned by the galaxy, but not broken by despair. Tomorrow, the Ravak would come. Tomorrow, the dome would fall. But tonight, the city of crystal glowed with the light of courage, and that would have to be enough. The attack began at dawn. 50 black ships dropped from high orbit like falling stones, their hulls scarred from countless raids across the galaxy. The Ravak horde moved in perfect formation, a pack of predators closing in on wounded prey. Their leader, Warlord Krexthor, sat on the bridge of his flagship and smiled with too many teeth. Below them, the Zephyrian dome flickered weakly. The energy barrier that had protected the Crystal City for months was finally dying. Krexthor could taste victory in the recycled air of his ship. Soon, he would walk through those pretty streets and choose the finest specimens for his slave markets. The weak crystalline people would fetch good prices in the outer systems. Begin bombardment, he ordered, his voice a growl that made his crew flinch. Target their power stations first. I want them helpless, but alive. The Ravak ships opened fire. Energy beams lanced down from the sky, striking the dome's projectors. Each hit sent cracks racing through the barrier, like spider webs on glass. The Zephyrians below could only watch as their last protection crumbled under the assault. Elder Thexvara stood in his tower, surrounded by his council. The building shook with each explosion, dust falling from the crystal ceiling. Through the windows, he could see families running for the deep shelters. His people had prepared for this moment, but preparation could only do so much against such overwhelming force. How long until the dome fails completely? He asked. Minutes, replied the chief engineer, his crystal body dim with exhaustion. The eastern section is already gone. They're concentrating fire on the main generators now. The elder nodded. Soon it would be over. Soon, the monsters would land and begin their terrible work. He had done everything he could to protect his people. But it had not been enough. Then something impossible happened. Space itself seemed to tear open above the battle. Reality twisted and folded, creating a wound in the darkness between stars. Light poured out of the tear, brighter than the system's distant sun. The Ravak ships stopped firing, their crews staring in confusion at the strange phenomenon. What is that? Krexthor snarled at his sensor operator. Unknown energy signature, Lord. Something is coming through. The tear widened, and from it emerged a ship unlike anything anyone in the system had ever seen. It was massive. Nearly twice the length of Thor's flagship, but built in a completely different style. Where Ravak ships were crude and brutal, this newcomer was sleek but powerful. Where the Zephyrian bioships were organic and graceful, this vessel was clearly mechanical. All angles and armor plating, strange markings covered its hull. Letters in an unknown script spelled out UES Indomitable along the ship's side. Warning lights blinked red and amber across its surface. Weapon ports that had been hidden behind armor panels suddenly opened, revealing guns the size of buildings. On the bridge of the human dreadnought, Captain Sarah Chen studied the tactical display with calm eyes. She was a small woman with gray hair and steady hands. The kind of person who had seen enough battles to know when one was necessary. Around her, the crew worked at their stations with quiet efficiency. "Sensor report," she said simply. 50 Ravak vessels, Captain," replied Lieutenant Torres from the tactical station. "All smaller than us, but they've got us outnumbered. The colony below is under active bombardment. Their defenses are failing." Chen nodded. The distress signal had reached Earth's monitoring stations 6 hours ago. Most governments would have debated the response for weeks. The United Earth Council had given her a single order: stop the massacre. By any means necessary. Communications, open a channel to the Ravak fleet. "Channel open, Captain." Chen stood up from her command chair. She was not an imposing figure by human standards, but her voice carried the weight of authority earned through decades of service. "This is Captain Chen of the United Earth ship Indomitable. You have 30 seconds to withdraw from this system or face the consequences. We don't make this offer twice." The message was broadcast in standard galactic trade language. Every ship in the system received it clearly. On the Zephyrian colony, communications officers stared at their screens in amazement. A rescue ship had actually come. But who were these humans, and why had they arrived when the great powers had refused? Thor's response was exactly what Chen had expected. The Ravak warlord's laughter filled the communication channel. A sound like breaking glass and screaming metal. "Little ship," he taunted. "You are brave but stupid. I have 50 vessels under my command. You have one. Leave now, and I might let you escape with your lives." "Sir," whispered one of his officers, "their energy signatures are unusual. Perhaps we should—" "Silence," Thor roared. "I have conquered 100 worlds and enslaved 1,000,000 souls. These unknown fools will be target practice for my gunners." Captain Chen had heard similar threats before. Pirates and raiders across the galaxy all spoke the same language of violence and intimidation. They counted on fear to paralyze their victims, on superior numbers to crush resistance. What they did not understand was that humans had been dealing with bullies for thousands of years. 30 seconds are up," she said calmly. "Mr. Torres, you may fire when ready." "Aye, Captain. All weapon systems online." The Ravak fleet opened fire first, filling space with energy beams and explosive missiles. They expected the lone human ship to die quickly, overwhelmed by the concentrated firepower of 50 vessels. Instead, something extraordinary happened. The human ship's shields flared to life, but they were unlike anything the galaxy had seen before. Instead of pure energy barriers, they seemed to be layered systems that absorbed, deflected, and distributed incoming damage. Energy beams that should have carved through hull plating scattered harmlessly across the shield matrix. Then, the Indomitable fired back. The sound of human railguns firing could be heard even in the vacuum of space, transmitted through the ship's hull to every ear in the system. Tungsten slugs accelerated to impossible speeds lanced out from the dreadnought's main batteries. They moved so fast that enemy sensors barely registered them before impact. The first Ravak ship to be hit simply vanished. One moment it was firing at the human vessel. The next it was expanding cloud of superheated gas and metal fragments. The slug had punched completely through the ship and continued on, striking a second vessel and crippling its engines. "Impossible," Thor screamed. "How can one ship—" His words were cut off as fusion torpedoes began launching from the human ship's secondary tubes. Each torpedo was a miniature star, detonating with the power of a small sun. Ravok ships that had survived countless battles were vaporized in seconds. But the real surprise was yet to come. Launch bays opened along the human ship's sides, and smaller craft began pouring out, fighters and bombers, moving in tight formations with a precision that amazed even the ship's artificial intelligence. They dove into the enemy fleet like hawks among sparrows, their weapons carving through Ravok armor as if it were made of paper. In less than an hour, the battle was over. Half the Ravok fleet was destroyed. The rest were fleeing toward the edge of the system, their engines straining to escape the nightmare that had emerged from the void. Krexthor's flagship, badly damaged but still functional, limped away with the survivors. The warlord himself sat in stunned silence, unable to comprehend what had just happened. His fleet, which had conquered dozens of worlds, had been crushed by a single unknown vessel. Below, on the surface of Kepler 442c, 50,000 Zephyrians stared up at the sky in wonder. The dome still flickered weakly, but the bombardment had stopped. The black ships were gone, replaced by a single guardian that hung in orbit like a steel angel. Captain Chen activated the communication system once more, this time directing her message to the colony below. This is the UES Indomitable to Kepler 442c colony. The immediate threat has been neutralized. We are standing by to provide assistance. Please respond on emergency frequency 7. In his tower, Elder Thexvera found his voice at last. This is Elder Thexvera of the Zephyrian colony. We thank you for your intervention. May I ask who you are? And I. Elder Thexvera. Chen smiled for the first time since entering the system. We're humans, Elder. And we heard you needed help. Captain Sarah Chen stood in the Indomitable's war room, studying the tactical display that showed the scattered Ravok fleet. Her officers gathered around the holographic projection, pointing out enemy positions and discussing strategy. To the Zephyrians listening in on the communication channel, it sounded like organized chaos. Sir, the enemy flagship is trying to rally the survivors near the gas giant, reported Commander Williams, the ship's tactical officer. They're using the radiation field to mask their signatures. Smart, Chen replied. What's our fighter status? All squadrons recovered and rearmed. Pilots are requesting permission for another sortie. Granted, but I want them to focus on disabling engines, not destroying ships. Those crews might have useful information. Elder Thexvara, listening from the colony surface, was amazed by the speed of human decision-making. In Zephyrian culture, every choice required consultation with the Council of Elders, careful consideration of all options, and meditation on the spiritual implications. These humans seemed to make complex battle decisions in seconds. What he did not understand was that humans had been perfecting the art of war for thousands of years, while other species in the galaxy had evolved past conflict through technology, philosophy, or natural pacifism. Humanity had climbed to the stars on a ladder built from 10,000 years of fighting each other. Every system on their ships, every tactic they used, every reflex their soldiers showed, was the result of endless conflict and adaptation. The Indomitable itself was a perfect example. While most galactic species built their ships to emphasize their strengths, humans built theirs to survive weaknesses. The ship's hull was not just armored but layered, with multiple redundant systems buried deep inside protective barriers. Where alien vessels relied on single powerful shield generators, the human ship had hundreds of smaller ones that could be rerouted and reinforced as needed. Captain, called Lieutenant Rodriguez from the sensor station. I'm picking up movement in the asteroid field. Looks like a dozen Ravok ships trying to use the rocks as cover. Chen studied the display for exactly 3 seconds before making her decision. Launch mining pods toward grid 7-7. Load them with seeker charges. Seeker charges, ma'am? The asteroids aren't just cover, Rodriguez. They're ammunition. Let's show them how humans use the environment. Within minutes, automated mining pods were racing toward the asteroid field. These were standard human industrial equipment, designed for breaking apart space rocks and harvesting metals. But like everything humans built, they could be adapted for war. The pods attached themselves to the largest asteroids and began drilling, filling the holes with explosive charges programmed to seek out enemy ships. The Ravak hiding in the field suddenly found themselves surrounded by weapons that had been rocks just minutes before. Asteroids began exploding, each one sending clouds of metal fragments racing in all directions. Ships that thought they were safely hidden behind cosmic debris were suddenly being bombarded by high-velocity shrapnel. But the real demonstration of human warfare came when the enemy tried to board the Indomitable itself. Warlord Krex Thor, desperate to salvage something from the disaster, ordered his fastest ships to close with the human vessel. If his fleet could not win through firepower, perhaps they could succeed through the brutal close-quarters combat that Ravak warriors had perfected across the galaxy. "Boarding pods incoming," Williams reported. "They're targeting our engine section and lower hangar bay." Quote, "Most species would have panicked at the thought of enemy soldiers fighting inside their ship. Boarders could disable critical systems, slaughter crew members, and turn a victory into a catastrophic defeat. But humans had been preparing for this possibility since they first ventured into space." "Sound the boarding alert," Chen ordered calmly. "Deploy Marine squads to repel boarders and activate the internal defenses." Throughout the ship, warning lights began flashing red. Blast doors sealed automatically, dividing the vessel into dozens of separate sections. Weapon lockers opened, revealing assault rifles, plasma pistols, and combat armor for any crew member who needed them. The ship's artificial intelligence began rerouting power away from non-essential systems and strengthening the internal shields that protected vital areas. But most importantly, 200 human Marines who had been waiting patiently in their ready rooms finally got their chance to fight. Staff Sergeant Maria Santos led her squad through the lower corridors toward the breach point. She had been fighting for 15 years, from the corporate wars around Jupiter to the pirate suppression campaigns in the Outer Rim. Her Marines moved with the fluid precision of people who had trained together until they could operate blindfolded. "Contact front," called Corporal Kim from the point position. 12, Ravak, maybe more. They've got some kind of energy weapons." Santos peered around the corner and saw exactly what she expected. The Ravak were big, brutal creatures covered in natural armor plating and carrying weapons designed to intimidate as much as kill. They moved like a mob, relying on fear and superior numbers to overwhelm their enemies. Against most galactic species, this approach worked perfectly. Against humans, it was a death sentence. "Williams, take the high position. Kim, flank left. Martinez, grenades on my mark." Her squad moved like a machine. Williams scrambled up a maintenance ladder to fire down on the enemy from above. Kim disappeared into a side passage, moving to attack from an unexpected angle. Martinez prepared his grenade launcher, while Santos checked her rifle one more time. Mark. The fight lasted less than 30 seconds. Human Marines did not charge blindly into battle like barbarians. They did not rely on individual heroics like knights. They fought like a pack of wolves, using coordination, superior equipment, and ruthless efficiency to destroy their enemies. The Ravak never had a chance to understand what was happening. Grenades exploded among their formation, stunning them and disrupting their charge. Williams picked off their leader with a precise shot from above. Kim appeared behind them like a ghost, cutting down stragglers who tried to retreat. Santos and Martinez advanced methodically, their rifles firing in controlled bursts that found gaps in enemy armor with mechanical precision. When the smoke cleared, 12 Ravak warriors lay dead in the corridor. The human Marines had suffered exactly 0 casualties. Similar scenes played out throughout the ship as boarding parties met human defenders. The Ravak had expected to fight frightened civilians, or at best, ceremonial guards. Instead, they encountered soldiers who had been trained since childhood to fight in every conceivable environment. In the hangar bay, Marine Lieutenant Jackson used the ship's own loading equipment as weapons, dropping containers weighing several tons onto enemy formations. In the engine room, Chief Petty Officer Brooks sealed the Ravak inside and began pumping the compartment full of knockout gas. On the upper decks, Corporal Lewis used the ship's artificial gravity to disorient boarders, making them fight while upside down and dizzy. Within an hour, every boarding party had been eliminated or captured. The Indomitable had not lost a single crew member to enemy action. Captain Chen received the final reports with satisfaction but not surprise. This was exactly what human ships were designed to do. Every corridor was a potential battleground. Every system had backup plans and emergency protocols. Every crew member was trained to fight if necessary. "Ma'am," called Communications Officer Park. "The surviving Ravok ships are requesting terms for surrender." Chen looked at the tactical display one more time. Of the 50 ships that had attacked the colony, only 15 were still capable of movement. The rest were either destroyed or so badly damaged that they posed no further threat. "Tell them to power down all weapons and prepare for boarding," she ordered. "We'll accept their surrender, but they're going to answer for what they tried to do here." On the surface of Kepler 442c, Elder Thexvara and his people watched in amazement as the human ship methodically rounded up the remnants of the fleet that had terrorized them for months. These strange newcomers did not just fight with superior technology, they fought with a combination of planning, adaptability, and sheer determination that no one in the galaxy had seen before. The rescue ships were already launching from the Indomitable's hangar bays, carrying medical supplies and engineering teams to help repair the colony's damaged systems. But more than that, they carried the promise that someone in the vast galaxy still believed that protecting innocent lives was worth any cost. The age of human intervention had begun, and the galaxy would never be the same. Dr. Elena Vasquez had seen many alien species during her 20 years in the Earth Medical Corps, but nothing had prepared her for the Zephyrians. The first group of wounded colonists brought aboard the Indomitable looked like living crystal sculptures, their translucent bodies glowing with soft inner light. Some of that light was flickering weakly, and she quickly realized this meant they were dying. "Medical Bay 2, prepare for incoming wounded," she called over the ship's communication system. "And someone find me information on Zephyrian biology. Fast." Weak, the human medical bay was a marvel of efficiency. Designed to treat injuries from dozens of different species, adjustable gravity, variable atmosphere controls, and medical scanners that could analyze any known form of life. But the Zephyrians were a new challenge, their crystal-based biology unlike anything in the medical databases. "Doctor," called Nurse Thompson, "we've got 15 critical cases here. I don't know how to treat them." Vasquez looked at the wounded Zephyrians lying on the medical tables. Their bodies were cracked in places, dark lines running through their crystal structure like fractures in glass. Some had lost limbs that appeared to have been broken off rather than cut. All of them were fading, their natural glow growing dimmer by the minute. "Get me a communication line to the colony," she ordered. "I need to talk to their medical staff." Within minutes, she was speaking with Healer Silandra, the colony's chief medical officer. The Zephyrian appeared on the viewing screen, her own body showing stress fractures from the long siege. "Human doctor," Silandra said, her voice like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. "I thank you for trying to help our people. But I fear your methods may not work for our kind." "Then teach me yours," Vasquez replied simply. "What do you need to heal them?" Silandra's glow brightened with surprise. You wish to learn our ways? I want to save lives. I don't care whose methods we use to do it." This was the beginning of something neither species had expected. For the next 6 hours, human doctors and Zephyrian healers worked side by side, combining their knowledge in ways that neither could have achieved alone. Vasquez learned that Zephyrian bodies were not just crystal but a complex biological system that used mineral structures to channel energy. Silandra discovered that human surgical techniques could repair damage that Zephyrian healing alone could not fix. "The fracture goes deeper than I can reach with traditional methods," Silandra explained as she examined a young Zephyrian whose leg had been shattered by falling debris. "The energy pathways are severed, but your healing field can regrow crystal tissue, right?" Vasquez asked, studying the scans on her medical display. "What if we use human microsurgery to reconnect the pathways first? Then let your field do the actual healing." It was a crazy idea, combining alien biology with human technology in ways that had never been tried before. But it worked. The young Zephyrian's leg began to glow more brightly as the energy pathways reconnected, and within an hour, new crystal growth was filling in the damaged areas. Word of the medical cooperation spread quickly through both the ship and the colony. Soon, human engineers were working alongside Zephyrian builders to repair the damaged dome system. Commander James Park, the Indomitable's chief engineer, found himself fascinated by the aliens' approach to construction. "You grow your buildings?" he asked architect Dorvash as they stood before the main dome generator. "We nurture them," the Zephyrian corrected gently. "Each structure is a living thing, connected to all the others. When one part is damaged, the whole system feels pain." Park nodded, understanding despite the strange concept. "That's why the dome kept getting weaker, even when you fixed individual generators. The whole network was suffering from the damaged sections. Working together, they developed a solution that neither species could have created alone. Human engineering provided robust backup systems and redundant power supplies. Zephyrian biotechnology created self-repairing connections that would automatically heal minor damage. The result was a defensive system far stronger than the original, but the real breakthrough came in the cultural exchange between the two peoples. Captain Chen found herself sitting in Elder Thexvara's office, sharing a meal that combined human rations with Zephyrian energy crystals. The conversation ranged from military tactics to philosophy, each species learning from the other's perspective. "I must ask," Thexvara said, his body glowing with curiosity. "Why did your people come to help us? You had no obligation. No treaty that required your intervention." Chen thought about the question as she sipped her coffee, a dark human brew that the Zephyrians found fascinating. "Because you needed help, and we were able to give it. That's really all there is to it. But surely there must be more. Your ship, your crew, they are valuable assets. You risked them for strangers you had never met." "Elder," Chen said, leaning forward, "let me ask you something. If you saw a child drowning in a river, would you stop to ask what species it belonged to before jumping in to save it?" Thexvara's glow brightened as he understood. "Among my people, we have a saying. The crystal that stands alone will always shatter. Only by supporting each other do we become strong." "Humans have a similar idea," Chen replied. "We say that no one is truly safe until everyone is safe. Evil that goes unopposed spreads like a disease. By helping you, we're helping ourselves in the long run." Throughout the colony, similar conversations were taking place as humans and Zephyrians worked together on reconstruction projects. Marine Sergeant Santos found herself teaching Zephyrian security officers basic combat techniques, not because they wanted to become warriors, but because they needed to be able to protect their families if the Ravak ever returned. "Fighting is not about being brutal or cruel," Santos explained to a group of young Zephyrians. "It's about being prepared to stand between innocent people and those who would harm them. Sometimes violence is the only language bullies understand." The Zephyrians were amazed by human adaptability. Every challenge they presented seemed to result in a creative solution. When their biocomputers proved incompatible with human systems, Technician Rodriguez built interface devices that translated between the two technologies. When human food proved indigestible to Zephyrian biology, Chef Williams developed new recipes that both species could enjoy. Most importantly, the humans never tried to force their own solutions on the Zephyrians. Every project was a collaboration, with both species contributing their strengths and learning from each other's approaches. Dr. Park, the ship's xenobiologist, was particularly fascinated by Zephyrian society. "Your entire civilization is based on harmony and mutual support," he observed during one of his research sessions. "How do you handle conflicts between individuals?" Young Zephyrian scholar Nalthex brightened with enthusiasm as she explained. "When two crystals resonate in conflict, they create destructive interference patterns. But when they harmonize, they amplify each other's strength. We have learned to find the harmony in our differences rather than letting them become destructive." "Humans handle conflict differently," Park admitted. "We tend to argue things out, sometimes quite loudly. But we've found that disagreement can lead to better solutions if everyone is willing to listen and learn." As the days passed, both species realized they had found something precious. The Zephyrians had discovered protectors who would fight for them without asking anything in return. The humans had found people who shared their belief that life was sacred and worth defending. Elder Thexvara made the announcement that would change both their worlds forever. Standing before the assembled colony, with Captain Chen at his side, he spoke words that would echo across the galaxy. "Today, we establish a new bond," he said, his voice carrying to every corner of the city. "The Zephyrian colony of Kepler 442c and the United Earth Federation will share knowledge, resources, and friendship for all time to come. We will teach them our ways of peace and harmony. They will show us their strength and determination. Together, we will build a future where no one stands alone against the darkness." The celebration that followed lasted 3 days. Human music mixed with Zephyrian crystal songs. Earth foods were shared alongside alien delicacies. Children of both species played together, creating games that neither could have invented alone. But perhaps most importantly, the galaxy began to take notice. News of the rescue spread from system to system, carried by traders and travelers who had witnessed the impossible. A human warship had appeared from nowhere to save an alien colony that no one else would help. They had asked for nothing in return except the chance to do what was right. The message was clear. Humanity had arrived on the galactic stage, and they brought with them ideas that the universe had forgotten. Honor, courage, the simple belief that protecting innocent life was worth any cost. The age of human guardianship had begun. The news reached the Altarian Federation capital just as their High Council was beginning their morning session. Grand Counselor Vex Thera was reviewing routine trade agreements when his aide burst into the chamber, breaking 1,000 years of protocol. "Forgive the interruption, Grand Counselor, but you need to see this immediately." The holographic display activated, showing footage from Kepler 442c. The images were clear and undeniable. Human ships in orbit around the rescued colony. Construction teams working to rebuild damaged structures. Medical shuttles carrying supplies to grateful Zephyrians. The rescue that the Federation had declared impossible had been completed by a species most of them barely knew existed. How many ships did they send? Vex Thera asked, his tentacles twitching with nervous energy. "One, sir. A single vessel defeated the entire Ravak fleet." The silence in the council chamber was deafening. 50 of the galaxy's most experienced leaders sat in stunned quiet, trying to process what they were seeing. For 3 months, they had received desperate pleas from Kepler 442c. For 3 months, they had found reasons to refuse help. Political complications. Resource allocation. Territorial boundaries. All the careful excuses that mature civilizations use to avoid difficult decisions. Now, a younger species had shown them what decisive action looked like. "Get me a communication line to the human ship," Vex Thera ordered. "I need to speak with their commander." The response came within hours, but not from Captain Chen. Instead, Admiral Rebecca Torres, commanding officer of Earth's Third Fleet, appeared on the Council's main display. Behind her, through the windows of her flagship, the Altarians could see a dozen human warships in formation. "Grand Counselor Vex Thera," Torres said with professional courtesy. "I understand you wish to speak about the Kepler 442c situation. Admiral, we want to commend your people's actions and offer Federation support for ongoing relief efforts." Torres's expression did not change, but something cold crept into her voice. "That's very kind of you, Grand Counselor, though I have to wonder where this generous spirit was 3 months ago when the Zephyrians were begging for help." The words hit the Council like a physical blow. Vex Thera's aide quickly whispered updates about the political situation. Protest demonstrations outside Federation facilities. Member worlds questioning their government's decisions. Trade partners asking uncomfortable questions about Federation values. "Admiral, perhaps we can discuss expanded cooperation between our peoples. With respect, Grand Counselor. Earth is not interested in cooperation agreements right now. We're too busy responding to distress calls that other civilizations seem to ignore." The transmission ended, leaving the Altarian High Council to contemplate a galaxy where their careful neutrality suddenly looked like moral cowardice. Similar conversations were taking place across known space. The Centauri Collective found itself facing trade boycotts as member species questioned an empire that valued profit over morality. The vegan Commonwealth's military leadership struggled to explain why they had lectured the dying instead of offering protection. But the real impact was being felt on the frontier worlds, the small colonies and mining stations that had always known they were on their own when trouble came. For the first time in galactic history, someone was actively patrolling for distress signals and responding without political considerations. Captain Lisa Chang commanded the UES Defiant, a smaller vessel than the Indomitable but equally effective. She was studying star charts in her ready room when the priority alert came through. "Captain, we're receiving a distress call from the Tau Ceti mining platform. They're under attack by unknown raiders." Chang was already reaching for her uniform jacket. "How long to reach them at maximum warp?" 18 hours, ma'am. "Make it 15. And send a message to the platform. Help is on the way." This had become the new reality across human space. Every Earth vessel carried standing orders to respond to any distress call, regardless of the species sending it. The United Earth Council had voted unanimously to create the Humanitarian Response Fleet, a force dedicated entirely to protecting those who could not protect themselves. The results spoke for themselves. Within 6 months of the Kepler 442c rescue, human ships had intervened in 17 crisis situations. They had stopped pirate raids, evacuated colonies from natural disasters, and provided medical aid during plague outbreaks. Each time, they asked for nothing in return except the knowledge that innocent lives had been saved. The galactic community was beginning to understand that something fundamental had changed. For millennia, space had been governed by cold political calculations and careful self-interest. The strong preyed upon the weak, while the powerful watched and made excuses. Humanity's arrival had introduced a new factor into these ancient equations: moral courage. Elder Thexvara stood in his rebuilt office, looking out at the crystal city that sparkled in the morning sun. The reconstruction was complete, but the changes went deeper than new buildings and repaired systems. His people had learned to defend themselves, trained by human instructors who had taught them that peace was worth fighting for. "Elder," called Kiraneth from the communication station, "we're receiving an interesting message from the Outer Rim." "What kind of message?" "It's from a species I've never heard of before. The hegemony of Rigel. They're requesting our help in contacting the humans." Thexvara's crystal body brightened with understanding. The rescue of Kepler 442c had become legendary across the galaxy, a story told in a dozen languages about the day salvation arrived from an unexpected direction. Other oppressed peoples were beginning to hope that they too might find protection. What's their situation? They're facing invasion from something called the Shadow Fleet. Their own government forces have retreated to the inner systems, abandoning the outer colonies. They've heard about what happened here, and want to know if the humans might help them too. The elder considered the request carefully. 6 months ago, he would have been helpless to do anything but offer sympathy. Now, his colony maintained a direct communication link with Earth's Humanitarian Response Command. "Send their request to Admiral Torres," he decided, "and include our personal recommendation that it be given urgent consideration." The message reached Earth within hours, where it joined a growing list of requests for human intervention. The United Earth Council faced a challenge their ancestors could never have imagined: how to manage humanity's new role as the galaxy's conscience. President Maria Santos, no relation to the Marine Sergeant, addressed the Global Assembly with words that would define Earth's future. "My fellow humans," she began, "we find ourselves in a unique position. Our ships patrol the darkness between stars, and our crews stand ready to answer calls for help that no one else will take. This is not a burden we sought, but it is one we will bear with pride." The assembly hall erupted in applause, but Santos raised her hand for quiet. "However, we must be clear about our principles. We do not fight for conquest or profit. We do not seek to impose our values on others. We fight only to protect the innocent and defend those who cannot defend themselves. We are not the galaxy's police force. We are its immune system, responding wherever evil threatens to spread." The vote was unanimous. Humanity would expand its humanitarian fleet and formalize its commitment to galactic protection. New ships were commissioned, new crews trained, and new bases established to ensure rapid response times across known space. The ripple effects continued to spread. Young beings from dozens of species began applying to join human crews, drawn by the idea of serving something greater than themselves. The first interspecies graduating class from Earth's Naval Academy included Zephyrians, reformed Ravok, and even a few Altarians who had resigned from their own service in protest of their government's policies. Captain Chen, now promoted to Admiral, found herself commanding not just human vessels, but the first truly integrated fleet in galactic history. Her flagship bore the names of all the species that served aboard it, a symbol of the unity that humanity's example had inspired. "Admiral," reported her aide, Commander Patel, "we're receiving multiple distress calls. The Rigel situation has escalated, but there are also reports of slaver raids in the Vega sector and a plague outbreak on Proxima Colony." Chen studied the tactical display, watching red warning markers appear across the galaxy like symptoms of a spreading disease. But for every crisis, she had ships and crews ready to respond. The age of abandoning the helpless was ending. "Dispatch the Second Fleet to Rigel, the Fourth Fleet to Vega, and the medical ships to Proxima," she ordered. "And send a general message to all Earth vessels. No one stands alone, while we have the power to help." The message was received by human ships across the galaxy, from the newest frigate to the mighty dreadnoughts that now bore names like Hope, Courage, and Guardian. Each crew carried the same promise: that evil would find resistance, that the innocent would find protection, and that the darkness between stars would no longer be a place where monsters could hunt unopposed. On distant Kepler 442c, Elder Thexvara watched the stars and smiled. His people were safe, protected not by politics or treaties but by the simple human belief that some things were worth fighting for. The galaxy had found its guardians at last. And they wore the faces of the species that had emerged from the void when no one else would come. In the depths of space, a new distress signal began broadcasting. Somewhere in the darkness, someone needed help, and somewhere in that same darkness, a human ship was already changing course, its crew preparing to bring hope to another corner of the galaxy. The age of abandonment was over. The age of human guardianship had begun, and the universe would never be the same.